Have you ever had that game? You know, the one that creeps around in the back of your psyche like a plague-ridden rat? The one that may have turned you into the emotional void you are today due to consuming such media at a young age? Maybe not. But for me, it was Twisted Metal Black. I actually found this game tucked away in a crawl space of a new home I moved into as a kid, and yeah, that'll fuck up a child. Stemming from the mid-90s, Twisted Metal is, simply put, a car destruction series. Drive around, kill your opponents, win the contest, and have your wish granted. Each entry seemed to offer a different style, some beloved and some detrimental, but nothing more well-regarded and provocative than Black.
The series began as a design idea that me and another designer, Mike Yam, had back in '93 or '94. And from there, I jumped on the project with a developer who at the time was called Single Track.
A Single Track were the devs heading the first game, while the rights to the underwhelming third and fourth entries were handed to 989 Studios. Following fan reception, Sony themselves requested David Jaffe, series director for Single Track, to create a new and darker entry for the franchise under their new studio, Incognito Entertainment. From hair metal to industrial metal, the series took inspiration from films such as Silence of the Lambs and set in for its approach down to the soundtrack. Call it a stretch, but I honestly don't think any game has hit the depths this title has in terms of dark subject matter. I mean, it is a fine line to balance, but Black approached it in a direction that isn't too much to laugh off, and even made me mildly uncomfortable experiencing it.
Your wife, she didn't die easy. You should know, she begged for you as I killed her.
It might honestly be too harsh or even unacceptable to some by today's standards. The world and its inhabitants were completely altered. Returning faces were warped entirely. Calypso, for example, this Tommy Wiseau-looking fella, took heavy inspiration from Hannibal Lecter, and his means of wish granting went from fantastical and in line with a dark sense of humor to plausible and disturbing. More well known is the icon of the franchise, Needles Kane. The car is called Sweet Tooth, apparently not the driver himself, turning from a simple escapee of an asylum or a former circus clown in an ice cream truck with his head on fire, to that same escapee who now dons a mask to hide his rational personality, in order to become a serial killer who oftentimes lures children into his ice cream truck and murders them. Or at least, that's what's implied and shown in promotional material.
Oh my... Johnny!
See, the game did face some censorship despite Sony seemingly giving the okay on going darker than ever. The PAL region had cutscenes removed alongside other changes, but it seems even some story content was cut entirely according to dev interviews.
A lot of times you think that when someone has these kind of ideas, you're thinking, are they trying too hard to be edgy and cool and not nerd-like, or do they really kind of think this way? And it really became obvious that in the case of David Jaffe, there really is some deep, dark, evil motivations.
There were things I wanted to do in Black that they wouldn't let me do, and some of it was just so... Okay, some of it was valid. Well, we had this great shot of, and I have kids, right? I love kids. I'm a nice, gentle guy, but it's a fantasy, right? And in the scene, there was this great shot of him pushing this little, 5-day-old into the baptismal, into the water, and his little arms and chubby little legs are kicking around in there, and he's just like shoving the thing down there, because in his mind, he's like exercising this demon. Sony made us cut that. But then you know what it was? It gave people within the company an opportunity to kind of play the aren't I noble and pious and aren't I normal card, and it's like, you.
It's honestly kind of laughable how much graphic content they were allowed to display while also seemingly not being able to swear. Like, oh yeah, show this man being forced to eat his friend in a trench, or this man murder his wife for cheating on him with the man who tried to kill him. God forbid you say the fuck word though.
Oh, I got a family.
Shut up and bleed, you motherfucker.
I'll definitely say the game can be a mixed bag to most, but I've found myself getting reattached to this title from a narrative and aesthetic standpoint. Okay, yeah, it can be overbearing and inherently edgy, but that just has an added allure to this title, as in the current state of social media and gaming, you simply can't have a game push boundaries to this uncomfortable degree without risk of getting cancelled on Twitter by grade school girls who will spam fan cams of some Korean boys or Zhongli or whatever the fuck they want to throw at you this week. Beyond that lack of restraint, an intense surge of creativity and technical prowess came with it. Of course, this was funded through Sony themselves, so the game was made to promote the hardware, and I'm still kind of impressed with what they accomplished.
As we started to look at some of the specs on the PlayStation 2, we began to realize that we could actually create a game that fulfilled all of the fantasies we had had back in '93 when we first came up with the idea of a Twisted Metal game. Clouds rushing overhead that creates this kind of eerie feel. We've got trash and dead leaves blowing through the streets, firefights on crowded freeways with moving traffic, real-time weather and night and day changing.
A lot of the CG renders hold up to this day, and the still-frame diorama approach to the main menu really stood out to me. They even took the themes of being mentally unhinged to the next level by diagnosing the majority of the cast with a mental disorder, which added another layer to the previously depthless characters. The stories were put on the forefront and expanded upon, with some of my favorites being Mr. Grimm, the cannibal Vietnam veteran, the preacher, an insane evangelist who believes he's been controlled by Satan and not a schizophrenic fits, Dollface, the poor girl trapped in the mask by her abusive mentor, caretaker, whatever he was, Raven, because obligatory goth girl, and Axel, who's actually on the side of bonus characters with unfinished cutscenes. But the details of him hunting down Needles Kane for murdering his wife who sent her body to him in pieces and stepping aside his machine to atone for his sins, whilst dragging his bloodied feet across the pavement during every match, winds up making a man who's really layered and tortured all in all from what started as a guy in two giant wheels. Characters were far more layered this time around. Music-wise as well, while they didn't get Rob Zombie back for anything, I was quick to recognize the composer behind the soundtrack had actually done the Invader Zim OST in the past. While the battle themes have the same vibes as that series, beat for beat oddly enough, the game also featured one of the earliest cases I've seen of a dynamic soundtrack. Every large-scale stage features 3 different tracks. There's the core battle theme, the one-on-one combat tracks, and when no combatants are nearby, atmosphere. Showcasing the scale of how much the PlayStation 2 can render on screen, stages can range from small to massive, even having an entire stage transition from prison ship in the ocean to an asylum in the city without loading screens. But this scale leads to many of the areas feeling so dense, yet empty. I found myself slowly driving past each area and just feeling cold. The city of Midtown is in complete devastation from the tournaments, and you could see the aftermath of it all here. The city feels lived in, and I have to emphasize that in the past tense. Lived in. Everything is completely torn apart, and it all just feels so grimy and rusted, which also leads to the disturbing sound design used. Showcasing the soundscape here, you can drive through asylums and hear doctors and nurses struggling to hold down patients. And most uncomfortable of all, to the point I am earnestly going to put a warning here to skip ahead because it might be going a little too far. Actors portraying a scene of domestic abuse on the suburb stage if you drive near some houses.
I'm gonna call the police!
Yeah, call the police! I'll take them on you! You think that's gonna stop me from hitting him like that?
Somebody help me!
Nobody's gonna
Again, it's actors, but nonetheless very, very uncomfortable to sit through. But hey, I'm talking about video games, so how's the gameplay?
Here's where Sweet Tooth, I think, came from now. So I actually spoke to a therapist about this. Kratos, who's a character I had a huge hand in creating from God of War, and Sweet Tooth, both of these characters are testosterone-fueled, aggressive, animalistic. They take exactly what they want. I'm not going to go into too many personal details about my life, but let's just say for the longest time, certainly when I was developing those characters, that wasn't who I was if you saw me walking down the street. But I can promise you that that's who I was underneath the surface. I love kids.
I won't pretend that the car destruction genre is all that lucrative or lively. Hell, the latest title in years is so caked up and clean in more ways than one that it doesn't get much play, even for free. But Twisted Metal has always kind of slapped at the sole driving force of the genre. Driving feels fast and tight, weapons have a strong sense of kinetic energy, and every car feels distinct in terms of speed, power, and general handling. Having played this game's campaign back and forth again and again and again to collect every car and ending, I've got a personal tier list here to illustrate what I feel is most viable. It's a huge commitment, so I don't expect the average person to play through as everyone, but this should at least help curb the surprising amount of difficulty this game has, something even the devs regret about the game design.
And I think because of that, the gameplay actually suffered. It was too hard. It wasn't creative enough. We really tied ourselves up being forced to every level having the same color palette of browns and blacks and grays and clouds in the sky rolling by. And I think the core experience, the interactive experience of that game really, really suffered because of it.
So for years you could have quoted me on saying this is the hardest game I've played, which says a lot given my taste. Once you really sink into the momentum of driving fast, eating ass, and hoarding explosives, the game becomes pretty manageable. Slowing down, focusing on just one opponent at a time, or killing any sense of momentum seems to be the real killer here. Especially when your other opponents never seem to kill each other and solely target you. AI is still kinda wonky in this one, and I would say is my biggest gripe. I will say though, the fact that cheats are hidden in the manual while enemies can just go around freezing your car or shooting backwards is a little bit unfair. Of course I have it physically, but that's not exactly available for the digital version on PS4 I imagine most people nowadays would lean towards, or other means of playing the game. Fuck you. Being able to shoot backwards feels like a necessity to get enemies from just spiking you full of missiles off your back. Otherwise, you're just not able to keep your momentum going, and it's just locked behind a cheat code, which feels a bit unfair without a tutorial or section in the game detailing these things. The core balancing as far as cars go, I feel is pretty cutthroat. With a few exceptions, every character special feels like it was made purely to cleave every player in half. Grim, for example, is paper thin, but makes up for that by being fast and having a Vietnamese war scythe you can toss out to cut down half your health, but it requires an intense amount of precision. Dollface, in a similar regard, has to be able to ram herself into you at full force, something a lot of people seem to want to do to me on the internet. However, the least balanced is probably Sweet Tooth, where the serial killer's clown truck turns into a mecha, which I'm all for. It's just a little tonally dissonant and does a ridiculous amount of damage if you're anywhere near his sightline. The cars on their own do feel impactful and weighty, generally speaking. If the cars weren't satisfying to handle, I don't think I would have put in as much time as I have. They didn't cave and make any of them handle realistically per se. It's still very arcadey and frantic in terms of speed, but every car felt fully realized and distinct. I also wound up enjoying the stages for their empty and drab aesthetics, though I wish there was more variety offered during the story. During each transition, you're given bits of commentary from the cast, but you're tied to a choice between two stages every time. A sense of choice is great, but I almost wish things were more randomized. I found myself lulling into a pattern and almost falling asleep doing the same couple stages, a mini boss, a small stage, and a final stage, and a final boss. Over and over again. The amount of secrets hidden in them are extremely fun and cryptic to scrounge around for, though I can't help but get a little nervous that you can shoot down a plane in a game that was a mere couple months before 9/11. Again, this game probably wouldn't pass clearance nowadays. Coming back to it all those years later, yeah, this game's pretty fun to play. Even if you don't dig the aesthetics and dive into the disturbing nature of it, there is still a great sense of arcadey challenge to toy around with here. I personally feel it all complements each other though. I could go on and on about this game, but really, I always tend to cling to how uncomfortable and eerie this title is. Even down to the unlockable characters, you get a creepy vision for what is exactly going on in the universe of Black. Might be common knowledge now to longtime fans, but upon beating the game as every single character, you'll unlock Minion. Hi. I lost the audio for the second half of the video. I couldn't really capture the same energy I was doing for the initial bits, and I kind of want to do something different, so latter half of this video is going to be kind of different now. We'll just see how it goes. Taking notes from Kofchi. But upon beating the game's every single character, you'll unlock Minion. At first, it's kind of horribly disappointing. A real bulky character has no cutscenes altogether and only speaks in numbers. However, you can actually decrypt the codes by arranging the numbers into the alphabet. On one hand, some of this only has significance to longtime fans, learning this is Marcus Kane, Needles Kane's split personality and original identity. He also reveals that all of this isn't real. The entire Black universe actually takes place inside Sweet Tooth's head. It might be a bit of a cop-out, but it was mind-blowing to me when I was little, and furthers the themes of psychotic issues and mental disorders in an interesting way. I just think it's neat. In fact, Twisted Metal Black was also planning to get a sequel which could have built upon this. Twisted Metal Harbor City. Well, that game got scrapped. Another later Twisted Metal game for the PSP, Twisted Metal Head-On, had a special edition that featured details on this, dubbed Twisted Metal Lost. The game was to take place in Titular City, feature on-foot missions, an expanded plot following Sweet Tooth's ending, open world elements. It was pretty expansive. But in a tragic turn of events, a majority of the crew and founding members of Incognito Inc. wound up dying in a plane crash. However, according to Lost, supposedly the now-deceased team sent a note to Sony, requesting that they release what was left of the game to the public, while also promoting the fact that the next Twisted Metal title would be coming out for the PlayStation 3. So I hope that anyone can tell that this was a fake urban legend made by the team in poor taste to can a sequel and promote a reboot. It's kind of pathetic. David Jaffe has stated in interviews that he would never do something like this, though, as you can imagine, he was also one of said founding members alongside the likes of Randy Zorko, so maybe this could have been the rest of the staff's doing while he had no say in the matter. It honestly is a shame. Sure, rebuilding from the ground up to upgrade to next-gen hardware would have been a pain, both how underwhelming and just alright the reboot was, which in and of itself borrowed heavily from Black. They really should have just continued from where they left off with Harbor City. Incognito was then rebranded to Eat, Sleep, Play before settling on Lightbox Interactive after the reboot underperformed. Then they became a mobile dev team and just vanished. A studio that seems so full of creativity, just gradually disintegrating into dust due to poor business decisions and possibly a lack of faith from Sony. But that's all she wrote. Black was a bestseller, but the franchise has kind of become a forgotten legacy. Though it does make me curious about how anyone unfamiliar with the franchise might feel picking it up nowadays. What do you guys think? Should the series stay dead and buried, or is there any value to be found here? To each their own, of course. I personally have my share of sentimentality and praises for it, even now that I'm older. If the franchise somehow ever returns, I want to see it painted black. Good lord. Hi. Oh, I can't believe this video is finally done. Oh god. I don't mean to sound melodramatic, but holy shit, that was such a tiring process, and I'm glad it's finally over. It's one of those cases where the video wasn't the longest thing it could have been. It wasn't like the editing was that mentally taxing. It's just, I tried a new plan for organizing my video workflow, and it was just terrible. And there were tech failures. It was a fucking nightmare. I probably shouldn't swear. It just didn't go too well. I think the video as a whole came out okay. I don't think all the recordings were all that amazing. I don't think my delivery in particular was all that great. But I was trying something new. I don't even think what I'm saying right now is all that great, but whatever. I'm just having it come off the cusp so I don't spend too much time recording this. I also thought I got rid of my lisp, but it sounds like it's coming back. Fuck. Ugh. I hope I did this game justice. I think I did pretty good with it. It's pretty important for like my childhood and all that, so I was like, you know, why don't I wing it and try and talk about it. I am kind of curious about more information on Harbor City, so not immediate, but I think I might also talk about that sometime. I don't know. For now, I'm more focused on rebranding the channel. Technically the links I have on screen are going to be invalidated pretty soon, but whatever. I'm basically making this video as like an unintentional send-off to the old name of the channel and all. For the time being anyway. I don't know if I'd ever go back to the Blackjack Kuro name or anything. But yeah, goddamn, I need to make some shorter videos sometime. I need to step up my editing game. I gotta create some art assets. I don't know. I certainly need to put out more videos. Doesn't matter if they're like short or not, because like, good lord. Working on this for like a month and a half was such a stupid decision. Any other time usually, this probably would have taken me like 2 weeks tops, but I decided to be a dum-dum and was like, oh wow, what if I shave all my editing for last? As far as like proper Photoshop and like little edits and stuff that I do. That was a terrible idea. That was a god-awful idea. I should not have saved that for last. I should have done it in the middle and maybe save Photoshop stuff for last. I don't know. I need to adjust my workflow is what I need to do because that was terrible. not the video, just the ideas that I had. Hopefully I can improve on my delivery too as well. I'm trying to be more relaxed at the mic and trying to, I don't know, be less YouTuber sounding. I'm doing this completely off script. That's probably why this sounds like a total mess right now. But yeah, no. I just want videos to sound nicer, I guess. I don't want them to sound so forced like I feel like they usually are. Last thing I want to do is sound like fucking Matt Pat in my videos or something. Sorry for the shade throw, but I think that's something we can all agree on. Man sounds fake on the mic. I just hope that I could have like a more relaxed tone or whatever without it sounding like too forced or anything. Granted, no matter what I record, I always tend to hate my voice, but it is what it is. Anywho, thank you so much for patrons who stuck with me through this video. I don't know how or why you did, but I really, really appreciate it. My top patrons this month are The Pizza He-Man, Nishikomiya, and Garrett Gage. Oh boy. Oh boy. I am so tired. So very, very tired. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm gonna work this stuff out, I swear. I'm not disappointed in this video, but like, man, I look back on the process, I'm like, oh god, I could have done so much better. I'm too tired to even bring up like the VTuber stuff right now, so. Oh, well. Bye-bye. See you next time.